Hi, my name is Sherry Sullivan. I'm with the Washington Department of Agriculture's Dairy Nutrient Management Program. Today I'm going to focus on agronomy and more specifically soil nitrate N. And I'll provide an overview of what records Department of Agriculture's Dairy Nutrient Management Program requires from over 300 licensed dairies. We do not provide oversight, regulatory or otherwise, to non-dairy AFOs unless they have a CAFO permit. And we currently have about 27 active CAFO permitted facilities in Washington, only 16 of which are associated with dairies. Now, in addition to the dairy nutrient management plans, it is through record-keeping requirements, records review, technical assistance, and enforcement if necessary, that we're able to help AFOs and CAFOs manage their manure nutrients to meet the state's agronomy requirements. The records help us understand the dairy's nutrient management story. In 2009, the Dairy Nutrient Management Act was updated to include a record-keeping component to show that nutrients were applied at an agronomic rate. It wasn't until 2012 that the rule was written to clarify exactly what records were required to demonstrate agronomic rates of manure application. And in 2017, the state's CAFO permit was updated and adopted. Ecology administers the CAFO permit, and through a Memorandum of Understanding, WSDA conducts inspections and initiates investigations of permitted facilities. Agronomy and record-keeping requirements are pretty similar between permitted and non-permitted facilities, so I'll weave both WSDA's Dairy Nutrient Management Program and CAFO permit requirements into the presentation going forward. And when you hear me say CAFO, I am specifically referring to a permitted facility. All dairies and CAFOs must provide an analysis on all sources of nutrients. There's still a little confusion about what constitutes a source of nutrients and also when and where the sample should be collected, but generally our producers are pretty good about getting the majority of sources sampled and analyzed. You see the analysis requirements for licensed dairies on the slide, which are very similar to CAFO requirements. A major difference is that CAFOs must collect and analyze nutrient samples after TSUM 200 and prior to land application. While this can be problematic for producers who can't wait maybe another week after TSUM 200 for nutrient analysis results to come back, it is good to have clarity around sample timing. CAFOs also must collect and analyze samples two more times at evenly spaced intervals in a given year to account for seasonal variation of nutrient content. Annually, dairies must collect a representative post-harvest soil sample from the top 1 foot of fields receiving nutrients for nitrate N analysis. This requirement applies to dairies both east and west of the Cascades. Our biggest struggles with soil sampling is timing and consistency. For non-permitted facilities, there's no prescriptive timing other than post-harvest, which leaves too much room for soil tests to be collected too late to be representative of how crops used the nutrients that were applied during the growing season, especially on the west side where heavy fall rains can quickly drive excess nitrates below the 1st foot of soil. In addition to post-harvest soil sample, CAFOs must also collect a pre-land application soil sample to help them develop field nutrient budgets, which are required prior to any nutrient applications. On the slide, you can see the Dairy Nutrient Management Program's target for soil nitrate N, which is no more than 30 parts per million, and the threshold of 45 parts per million. When the target and thresholds are exceeded, we provide technical assistance using additional records for guidance or referrals for the producer to work with their technical service provider to bring soil test numbers back down. We also have a compliance path associated with exceeding the threshold in 3 out of 5 years. CAFOs have a prescriptive adaptive management plan that they must follow when nitrate N numbers fall within specific ranges. The ranges identified in the permit determine a field risk associated with soil nitrate leaching, which I've illustrated in a later slide. The inspection reports that the producer receives are designed to help illustrate their story of nutrient management. This is a snap of soil nitrate grids that the CAFO permitted producer receives in their inspection report, emphasizing which fields require adaptive management to bring soil nitrate N levels down. Non-permitted dairies receive a similar grid which tracks 5 years of soil nitrate N levels. It's just not quite as colorful as this one, but still pretty effective at telling the story of soil nitrate management. So let's talk a little bit about adaptive management. I don't know how common this is in other CAFO programs in the US, but in Washington, a field risk level of soil nitrate and leaching is established based on fall soil test results. In general, west of the Cascades, where rainfall is heavier, soil samples are collected at a 1-foot depth. And east of the Cascades, soil samples are collected and analyzed at a 2-foot depth. If soil test levels are high or very high, according to the table on the right, in 3 consecutive years, then prescriptive adaptive management is required by the permit. At the extreme, nutrient applications are prohibited. And while groundwater monitoring is not required, it is an option available to the permittee to demonstrate that they're not impacting groundwater. The other option is to produce fall soil nitrate end results that fall below 30 parts per million, i.e. meet the medium risk level. Sorry about that. Every 3 years, facilities are required to conduct a more robust soil analysis. CAFOs are required to only test soil organic matter and phosphorus every 3 years, in addition to the annual nitrate testing. They do not have the pH, potassium, and electrical conductivity requirements. But as you can see in the soil test results example, many of our producers obtain a more complete soil analysis every year, which can help both the producers and the inspectors identify other issues that may be affecting nitrogen management. Application records. There is a lot here, but all are needed to help tell the story of nutrient management. When we see an elevated soil test, we go right back to the application records and the nutrient analysis to help the producer figure out what's going on. CAFOs have all of these application record keeping requirements and a couple more. Every CAFO must develop yearly field-specific nutrient budgets based on field-specific soil tests, expected crop yield, soil nitrogen and crop residue mineralization, etc. The standard considerations for developing a nutrient budget. And that field-specific nutrient budget, based on soil tests, nutrient tests, etc., must be developed prior to the first nutrient application, which cannot occur until after T-sum 200. All applications must stop prior to October 1 with caveats. Applications can occur after October 1 for permitted facilities if the CAFO demonstrates with soil samples and new field nutrient budgets that applications are necessary to provide nutrients to the double or cover or perennial crop. Manure transfers also play a role in a farm's overall nutrient balance. In fact, we have at least one dairy that's milking over 500 cows and has 0 application acres. Their entire nutrient balance is based on exporting nutrients to a third party, which is a whole nother can of worms in Washington. Looking at the slide at the top right, you can see a compost turner working dairy manure. Several of our larger dairies in central Washington export the majority of their manure solids as compost. Below on the left, you can see manure solids stacked and ready to be applied on berries. And on the lower right is a picture of a wee tractor and a wee manure tanker that has been developed specifically to apply liquid manure between rows of raspberries. We also require irrigation records, but this one is a bit of a challenge. Based on what we require, we don't have enough information to determine whether irrigation has caused soil nutrients to move below the root zone, potentially leaching to groundwater. Similarly, the CAFO permit requires producers to track the total amount of irrigation water applied to each field annually. But it does have the additional requirement also to prevent downward movement of nitrates and to not exceed water holding capacity in the first 2 feet. So how do we use all of these records to help AFOs and CAFOs manage manure nutrients? Most of us start with the soil tests. If they look bad, we dig deeper. For example, if soil tests are elevated in 3 out of 5 years, but the application records show that they've only applied 6,000 gallons per acre of manure to a pasture that yielded 5 tons per acre of silage, something is wrong. We also work with the producer. We ask questions. We look at the nutrient management plan that was developed for that facility or the manure pollution prevention plan that was developed for the CAFO facility. Does it make sense that a dairy that produces 10 million gallons of manure a year has an empty 3 million gallon lagoon, no export records, and application records for only 2 million gallons of manure? We look for other records, such as crop rotation from grass to corn, that could explain elevated soil nitrates. Or maybe part of the story is that the new field person making applications hasn't quite got the hang of record keeping yet. Also, we ask about soil samples. How are they collected? Did someone just scoop the tops off the molehills in the field and submit those as samples? We also discovered, by doing a side-by-side comparison, that soil test results when using a shovel are much different than the results from using a soil probe when taken in the same location. So consistency is incredibly important. Yes, both the Dairy Nutrient Management Program and the CAFO programs require a suite of records to help tell the story of agronomy, but I think we can do better. We can provide better manure nutrient management help to AFOs and CAFOs if we add/change a few of our policies or requirements. Now, this list is not exhaustive, but let's start with soil tests. We really need to look at soil, nitrate, and thresholds through the lens of soil type and cropping system rather than one size fits all for both sides of the Cascades. It would be helpful to develop soil sampling protocols that were applied statewide and make the tools available to all producers to get more consistent sample results. We should also consider adopting the CAFO practice of requiring the second foot of soil analysis for non-permitted facilities. This really makes sense where precipitation is low and soil nitrate levels are high, especially when accompanied by irrigation. And speaking of irrigation, the records don't do much as we currently require them to inform us about how soil nitrate might be moving below the root zone. We should consider either dropping the requirement to keep irrigation records and maybe adding the requirement to have an irrigation management plan. The application records we see are wildly inconsistent in content and appearance. Some records are missing critical information such as where or when nutrients were applied. That's not good. And some are presented to inspectors on a scale between fly-specked, manure-covered envelopes to tidy computer-generated spreadsheets. Now, both forms may have the exact same level of accuracy, but one is certainly much easier to read. Nutrient analysis records are also inconsistent. If samples are not collected in a manner that is representative of what's being applied, they are of no use to the producer when developing a field nutrient budget and are of no use to us when we're trying to provide technical assistance. Broadly, we would love to have one record-keeping format that all producers, permitted or not, use. Washington State University Extension has helped make inroads on this by creating a nutrient management and record-keeping calendar. Every producer gets a calendar, and some producers are using the record-keeping portion. We know we have a long road to hoe to get producers to change to one record-keeping format, but we really are working on it. We've always emphasized that records tell a story, be it good or bad. And when we're provided with complete and accurate records, we do a better job of helping AFOs and CAFOs manage their manure nutrients. Thank you very much for your time and attention today.